What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode, and today we are going to be going over my 2021 rod and reel arsenal. This is going to change throughout the year. It always does. It's changed a lot since last year. I think I got some new rods in here from actually, I know I've got new rods in here from last year. I sold some rods from last year, and I'm really getting dialed in on the rods I really like best and the ones I want in my arsenal. So we are going to try to make this as simple as we can. I'm not going into anything in that much detail, so if you guys have any questions, make sure to let me know in the comments, and I can do videos over any specific rods and reels from any of these here behind me. So with that being said, let's hop into all my rods and reels. Alright, so I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting on my spinning rods and working my way up to the biggest casting rod I've got. So, let's hop into the spinning rods. So, first up, let's hop into probably my newest rod I've got. And actually, yeah, this is my newest rod that I've got. This is a Dobbins Cadence 712 SF. This is a medium light action spinning rod, 7 foot, and it is paired with a Shimano Noski on it. On all my spinning setups, I believe that you guys will see, I run all 15-pound braid to a 6 or 7 pound leader. So that's basically how this rod's set up. This is set up specifically for Ned rigs right now. I had another rod you'll see in a minute for Ned rigs, but I didn't like the rod. So I got this rod and I absolutely love it so far. I've only used it once, but I love it when I've used it. So there's my first rod. Next up is the rod that used to be my Ned rig rod, and now it's kind of just an extra rod, spinning rod I've got because I don't like it too much. And that is a G Loomis E6X 822 DSR. This is paired up with a Daiwa BG 2500. Just for reference, all of my spinning reels I've got are 2500s. I don't like 3000s, I don't like 2000s, I just like 2500s. So that's what it is. Once again, it's got 15-pound braid to a 6-pound leader. This rod used to be my Ned rig rod. Now it may double as another drop shot rod or an all-purpose rod. Maybe something like little finesse spinners, finesse swim baits, maybe even wacky rigs, something like that. Because if you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you realize I do not like tying rods and reels on the boat or on the kayak. It's not fun to me. So I like having them all set ready to go. But there we go. There was my next one, 822 DSR. If I didn't mention it, this is, I believe it's a 6 foot 10 inch, and it's like a medium light to a medium power. I don't know exactly which one it is because G Loomis rates their stuff really weird sometimes. So there it is, E6X 822 DSR. Next is another Dobbins. This is a Dobbins Champion XP 703 SF. This is a 7 foot 3 power, which is a medium power rod. I think it's a fast action. Yep, it's fast action. And this is paired with a Lew's Custom Pro Speed Spin with the same thing, 15-pound braid to a 6-pound leader. And on this, I tend to throw underspins a lot. Any type of small finesse swim baits, this is going to be used for. But it may be replaced by another rod to where this is going to be strictly like a wacky rig rod. Or maybe even like a small jig head or shaky head rod. So there we go. That's what this rod is and what I use it for. Next in line is the Dobbins Sierra 702 SF. It's basically the same rod as my Cadence 712 that I've got, except the Sierra is a little bit more parabolic than what the Cadence and Furies and Champion XPs are. So this has a little bit more bend, I think, to the end of it rather than the Cadence. This is paired with, this is a Shimano Sahara actually, I forgot I had that on there, and 2500 size, 15-pound braid to a 6-pound leader, and this is a designated drop shot rod. I always have drop shots rigged up on this thing. I don't throw them too much, but I like always having them on there in case of those tough days where you can't catch them on anything else and you got to go to a drop shot. Last up on my spinning rods is my highest end spinning rod I've got, which is a Dobbins Champion Extreme 743 SF. I almost forgot what it was right there. But this is a 7 foot 4 inch 3 power, which is a medium power rod, and it's got a full cork handle. I absolutely love this rod. Definitely my favorite spinning rod I've got. I've got a Shimano Stratic CI4 Plus on here, 2500 size. Same deal, 15-pound braid to a 6-pound leader. As you see, I've got a little tiny little finesse spin on here, or underspin on here right now. But this is going to be changed over probably to a shaky head or another little small, like a deeper water swim bait on here shortly. It's in that season where you're going to be fishing little swim baits for smallmouth often around the rock. And if I'm throwing a spinning rod, I want it to be this rod. So that's probably what it's going to be used for here soon. It's just small little, maybe 1/4 ounce 2-watt swim bait heads with a 3-inch swimmer on the back of it. But this rod, phenomenal rod, definitely my favorite spinning rod I've got. So there is the last of the spinning rods. Now, sorry I'm kind of moving through this kind of quick, guys. Like I said, I'm trying not to make this video real long out and boring for everyone. Trying to get to the point of what rods they are, length, action, reels, how I have it set up, and what I use it for. So that's why I'm going quick. I've made these videos before, and I've had them be like 20, 25 minutes. I'm like, I'm not doing that again. I'm just getting in and out in the time I need, and with explaining everything I need. So, with that being said, we're moving on to the casting rods now. So starting with the casting rods, we are going to be talking about my slow-moving baits a little bit, and the rods I use for those baits. So first off, we're going to go with this rod. This is a Dobbins Champion XP 704C, so it's a 7-foot 4-power. It's supposed to be a heavy. I think it's probably more of a medium heavy. It's in between a medium heavy and a heavy, if that makes sense. So it's not quite a heavy power, but it's not quite a medium heavy. I absolutely love this rod. It's got a Shimano Corrado 70 on it. Typically, I throw Texas rigs on this. Pretty much anything under 1/2 ounce I throw on this. But I believe this rod's going to be set up for a shaky head here for one of my upcoming tournaments. Either that or one of these other rods that you'll see in a minute is going to be set up for shaky heads, because shaky heads is definitely the deal for one of these places, and it's going to need to be something that's tied on. So anyways, this rod is tied with 15-pound fluorocarbon. Up here in Ohio, you don't need 17 to 20-pound fluorocarbon when you're throwing Texas rigs and jigs. Is it nice and can it help? Yeah, I've got 2 other rods back here that do have, one of them has 20-pound on it, but it's just not something that's necessary. So I went with 15, something a little bit thinner, so it's a little bit more invisible under the water, creates a better presentation, but it's still strong enough so I can set the hook hard on fish and not worry about breaking it. Next is the Dobbins Caden 745C. Now, this isn't the Cadens that just came out. This is one of those prototype Cadens that came out a year ago, or about a year ago, and this thing's been an awesome rod. It used to be my Carolina rig rod. I changed up some rods and reels. I wanted to use this more than I throw Carolina rigs, so I picked it up. I threw a Daiwa Tatula CT on it, and I started throwing jigs on this rod, and this rod's awesome. I absolutely love it. Great rod. I use it all the time now. Now, on here, I've got 20-pound fluorocarbon on here. Like I said, I've got one rod with 20-pound on it. It's nice to have just if you're flipping a really heavy cover to where you really would like 20-pound over that 15 or 17. So it's just nice to have on here. Like I said, this is mainly a jig rod now, but this may turn into a Texas rig rod when I put my normal Texas rig rod, which is the Champion XP 704, into a shaky head rod. So this may become a Texas rig rod a little bit, because my next rod is definitely always having a jig on it and always being on my deck. The rod that's always going to be on my deck and always is going to have a jig on it is now my favorite rod I've got in my arsenal, and by far I think it's the best built rod by Dobbins by far. I haven't tried the Ecstasies yet. I've tried the Champion Extremes and down, but I don't know if there's another rod that I have from the Champion Extremes, Champion XPs, Furies, Sierras, Cadens. I don't think there's one that beats this. And this is a Dobbins Sam Sobey series. It is a 724C. This thing is an absolute killer jig rod. If you guys haven't checked out Sam Sobey on YouTube, he makes specifically, like he mainly flips. He throws deep structure, like slow moving baits, and he does really good at it. So when I saw this rod come out, I had to have it, and I am not disappointed at all. So, like I said, it's a 724C, 7-foot 2-inch 4-power, so a heavy power rod. I hear some people say they think it's got a little bit less tip than the normal 4-powers. I think it has a little bit more tip than a 4-power, and I really like it. This has a Shimano Metanium, and I'm not sure. I think it's an MGL. Anyways, I don't know if it's an MGL or not, but it is a Shimano Metanium HG, and this has 30-pound braid to, I believe I've got 17-pound fluorocarbon on here. And that's why I've got my Texas rig rod set up with 15-pound, my Caden, which is my jig rod, with 20-pound, because this has 17-pound and it's got braid. So basically I have stuff set up for every type of jig and Texas rig application I need to throw in, and it just makes it real easy when I'm on the lake. This rod specifically, I'm throwing like little compact jigs. But I can throw any jigs I want on this thing. I think it's got enough backbone to handle anything. It's rated from a quarter ounce to an ounce. So basically anything I'm throwing here in Ohio is going to be plenty for this rod. Or this rod's going to be plenty for it. So there we go. My Sam Sobey rod, by far my favorite rod I've got in my arsenal now. I don't think anything's going to beat it, and I'm probably going to sell some of my Fury flipping rods to get the Sam Sobey flipping rods. Next up are my flipping rods, which honestly aren't even used for flipping. This is a Dobbins Fury 765 flip. I got this because it was such a good deal that I couldn't pass it up, and it was like brand new, so I bought it, and I made use of it. Originally I used it for flipping and then small swim baits, but now I'm actually using this for Carolina rigs. So I've pretty much always got a half-ounce Carolina rig tied onto this. I used to not throw Carolina rigs up until this past year, and I'm glad I did because it started really helping on those slow days when fish were out deep and I couldn't get them up in the shallow, and I couldn't get them on jigs out deep or anything like that too. So I'm glad I have this. I've got it paired up with a Daiwa Tatula CT. I've got, I believe, 65-pound braid tied to a 20-pound leader for this, since I'm fishing deep, and I'm fishing deep structure a lot of the time. So it's a 7-foot, 6-inch, 5-power flipping stick, which is probably more than a 5-power typically is. But it's a good rod. No complaints about it at all, especially for the price these rods are. And yeah, I mean, it works good. I can basically use it for anything heavy, from Carolina rigs, jigs, heavy Texas rigs. I can even frog fish with it, and I have before, and it works great for it. And then I can also throw small swim baits on it. So it's a very versatile rod that I can use for anything. The next rod is basically the same as that rod, except this is a Dobbins Sierra 766 flip. It's basically got the same specs as that one. It may have a little bit more tip than the 765 flip, because like I said, the Sierras are a little bit more parabolic. So basically, I've got this paired up with a Daiwa Tatula SV, I believe. It's an 8-to-1 gear ratio. It has 20-pound fluorocarbon all the way on the spool, and I've basically been using this for an extra Texas rig or jig rod, heavy stuff, but mainly throwing these small swim baits and frogging, really, if I need it for frogging. It's a little bit long for frogging, but it does work. So that's basically what I have this rod for. And now since I got that, like I said, that Sam Sobey, that Caden, and then the Champion XP, all my Texas rig and jig rods, these are probably going to be very, very lightly used. But it's great to have just in case, because it's a very versatile rod, just like that Fury 765 flip. Sorry to cut back in, guys, and kind of make this look a little bit awkward, but I was just editing and I realized I forgot a rod. It was sitting right outside the room when I filmed. So, anyways, right here in between my flipping rods and getting into my cranking rods, one rod I forgot to mention, which also could be used for these spinner baits I said I don't have a rod for, is this right here. This is a Dobbins Sierra 733C. I mainly use it for lipless, and it's not even a cranking rod. It works great for lipless. I use it for lipless most of the time, but I can throw spinner baits on it no problem. The only issue is that a lot of the times I'm throwing spinner baits, I'm throwing lipless at the same times of the year, so it can be a little bit rough. But, I mean, like I said, I can make it work with other rods, but this is also paired up with a Shimano SLX, and it's got 17-pound fluorocarbon on it, because I like throwing lipless with fluorocarbon, and I like having that extra weight so I can rip it through weeds, not worry about it, and set the hook good, and not worry about breaking line. So, anyways, guys, back to your normally scheduled program. Alright, I had to rotate sides so we can fit all these other rods in here. But anyways, my next rods are working into my cranking rods and my big rods. So, next up is a Dobbins Champion XP 736 CB Glass. This is a crankbait specific rod and a glass rod. Gary Dobbins made this for chatterbaits, and oh my gosh, this thing is an amazing chatterbait rod. I absolutely love this rod. It was my favorite, not anymore because of having that same Sobey rod, but all my Dobbins that I have are definitely my favorite out of any other brand that I have. This is 7-foot, 3-inch, 6-power, but it's a crankbait rod and it's a glass rod. So it's got a little bit more tip than normal 6-power rods, and then it actually, since it's glass, I think it has more tip than a 6-power crankbait rod. So it's kind of hard to explain exactly how the tip is on this. This is paired up with a Shimano SLX DC, and I believe I've got 17-pound mono on this. Since this is a chatterbait and spinnerbait rod, I like throwing mono so it kind of stays up a little bit instead of going down. This may have fluoro on it. I don't think it does. I think it's got Suffolk Siege mono on it. It's 15 to 17 pound. I'm not definite on that, but this is definitely my chatterbait rod. I could throw spinnerbaits on it if I really want to, but basically this is always having a chatterbait on it. Really, some of my other rods, like my Dobbins Champion XP 704, I can throw spinnerbaits on. I can throw it on spinning rods if I need. I've got plenty of rods to be able to throw spinnerbaits on if I need to. Up next is one of my only non-Dobbins rods I've got, and I just won't sell this rod because of how collectible they are now, I guess, and how good this rod has been to me and how many of my bigger fish I've caught on this. And this is a Megabass Levante. I believe it's a 7'1" or 7'2". It looks like it's a 7'2". It's like a medium moderate fast. It's a crankbait rod. It's a swing fire model. And I've got this paired up with a Daiwa Tatula 100 with 12-pound fluorocarbon on here. This is basically my shallow to mid-diving crankbait rod. I use it for square bills, and I use it for like 6-foot to 8-foot divers. Anything over that, I can throw 10-foot divers on it, but I don't like to. I've got another rod which is better for that, but I can pretty much use this for anything 10-foot or under divers. So great rod, highly recommend it. But this is original Megabass Levante, not the Series 2, and they're hard to find and they're expensive when you do find them. So I don't know how the Megabass made the values of these rods go up like they did after they discontinued them, but it's been amazing. They've like doubled, tripled in price since they've discontinued them. So this is one non-Dobbins rods that I would probably never let go of, and I honestly thought I broke it the other day at a tournament, and I didn't, and I was so happy because I don't know what I would do without this rod. Moving down to the last two. Next is a Dobbins Champion XP 765 CB Glass. This is a 7'6" 5-power crankbait glass rod. Like I said, those glass crankbait rods are just kind of hard to say like how the tip is in comparison to other rods. I don't know how to explain it, but this has a Lew's BB1 original on it, and this has somewhere in between 12 and 14 pound fluorocarbon on it. I believe it's got 14 on it right now because I mainly throw like 12-foot or deeper divers on this rod. Right now I've got a DT10, a custom one tied on, and that since I'm throwing those deeper divers, I could probably throw 12 pounds, but since I'm fishing deep with them, I feel more comfortable throwing 14. It's probably not as good as getting a lighter line for it like 12, but it's just something that it's my confidence just throwing something that with like a line that thick. So great rod, highly suggested if you're throwing deep cranks. I haven't found any other crankbait rods I like as much as these past two rods I've showed you guys, so yeah. Last up is my big rod, and this is a Dobbins Champion XP 795 SB. This is a 7'9" 5-power swimbait rod, and this basically goes for all my swim baits that I would even throw, like bull shads, right here, which is a mag draft or mag slow, whatever they are. Anything like that. The Spro BBZ1s, the S waivers, all of that's on here. This has 20-pound fluorocarbon on it because I did have braid deleter and I snapped off a swim bait, and I will never go back to that because I don't want to risk losing an expensive swim bait. Another thing this rod's used for is A-rigging. I throw A-rigs on this all the time. If I don't have a swim bait on it, I have an A-rig on it, and vice versa. And this rod is awesome for both. This has a Daiwa Lexa 300 on it, which is a massive reel, but it works great for those big swim baits, so you can crank it real easily. So yeah, I mean, it's been a great combo. Like I said, it's got 20-pound fluorocarbon. I did use braid deleter, but I just can't go back to it and risk losing swim baits. Now, going back to the rods I've got and the rods I don't have and could use. One thing that I noticed is I don't throw jerkbaits or flukes a lot. So I don't really have a jerkbait or fluke specific rod right now. I just sold it. I didn't care for the rod. But really, if I want to throw one of those, I could throw it on spinning rods. A lot of people do. I think I'd feel more comfortable throwing a jerkbait or fluke on spinning rods or spinning gear. But, you know, I don't know. I may find another jerkbait or fluke rod that I like in casting that I may get. But as you guys can probably see, I'm not in short of rods or anything, so I can always sacrifice a rod to throw it on if I really need it to. And another rod that I really don't have that I could use is a spinnerbait rod, but like I said, I've got a Dobbins 704 Champion XP, which will work for it. I've got the 745, which could work for it, but it's probably a little bit stout. I've got the 724, which could work for it. So, I mean, I've got options if I need it to. I know a lot of people would be like, oh, you don't need that many rods, and you don't need like all these different models, and you don't need a spinnerbait specific rod. It just makes it easier on yourself if you're tournament fishing or when making videos, so I don't have to constantly retie and do all that. But yeah, I mean, those are really the only two that I really could think that I would like to get, but it's not a necessity right now. Anyways, though, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing my rods and reels arsenal that I've got, and maybe this helped you out some. So anyways, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.